Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Here we are in the heart of February, National Heart Health Month, and we're here for a webinar, Simple Things You Can Do to Improve Your Heart Health Now. This webinar is a joint effort between the Cardiovascular Council at Newton-Wellesley Hospital and the Mended Hearts organization in Newton. The Cardiovascular Council is a group that supports the programs and initiatives of the Elfers Cardiovascular Center at Newton-Wellesley Hospital. In addition, it's as an organization worked on outreach in education and awareness for cardiovascular health in the diverse communities that the hospital serves. My name is Beth Keene. I am a co-chair of the Cardiovascular Council. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, a Reiki master, and a huge proponent of lifestyle medicine and its health promoting practices. Our agenda tonight includes a little pep up activity to kick things off. Then we'll move to our keynote presentation, which will be followed by an introduction to the Mended Hearts organization by a couple of guest speakers. We'll conclude the evening with a question and answer session. I'd like you to know you can ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function on your Zoom screen. Remember, that's the Q&A function, not the chat function, the Q&A function, and we will be collecting those questions throughout the course of the evening and pooling them together and answering them as the program finishes and as time allows at the end of the night. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce Daniel Destin, another co-chair of the Cardiovascular Council. Daniel is a health coach at the Elfers Cardiovascular Center, and he manages the hospital's Shipley Fitness Center. He's a highly certified health and fitness professional who's developed a variety of programs for the employees and patients at Newton-Wellesley Hospital. Daniel, take it away.
Thank you, Beth. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's about 7:03 right now. I just have a question for you guys, and answer honestly to yourselves. How many of you have been sitting in a chair like this, looking at a screen for most of the day and not moving a lot? I definitely myself. So what we're going to do is spend another hour and a half doing that. But before we continue, we're actually going to take some time to do a little bit of stretching, a little bit of exercise while we're sitting in our chairs right now, okay? So I want everyone to join me. Even though I can't see you, I'm going to trust that I'm not doing this alone. We're going to start with some basic stretches in our chair, like I said, sitting up nice and straight, bring your shoulders back, all right? We're going to start with the right arm up in the air. Hope everyone's doing this. I can't see you. You're going to reach over to your left hand, to your left side, get a little stretch right through the rib cage, right? Hold that. You're going to breathe, inhale, exhale, hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, come back. Excellent. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Bring the other arm up, reach over to your right. And if that's not comfortable, if you can't bring that arm all the way up, just come across your body. Just make it more comfortable, okay? Just giving that stretch right through the rib cage. Bring it back and down, okay? The next one we're going to do is a bit of a rotation of the spine, kind of loosen up the spine, build up some mobility. You're going to take your chair, the back of your chair. If you have a handle, you can grab that. You're going to rotate over, try to look to the opposite side. Go comfortably, don't go too far if it hurts. And just hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Slowly breathe into it. 5, 4, 3, 2, and come back to the center slowly. Now, this one's a little bit more difficult. If you feel comfortable doing it, then do it. I'm just going to change the angle of my camera just a little bit. What you're going to do is we're going to open up the hips. It's a great exercise for opening up the hips. If you have a little bursitis or something like that, a little stiff hips. If not, if it's too much for you, don't bother. Just cross one leg over and I'm just going to adjust myself a little bit because you really can't see that. Cross right here, and you're going to just lean forward and just hold that stretch again. 5, 4, 3, 2. Come back slowly. I'm going to bring that down, switch sides, and slowly lean forward again and hold. And I trust that I'm not doing this by myself. 5, 4, 3, 2. Come back. Excellent. Good. So I'll come back later to talk about more exercises you can do. And some other tips. Enjoy. Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Daniel. I needed that. All right, but now we're getting ready for our main event. I'd like to introduce Dr. George Philippides, who is the Chief of the Cardiology Division at Newton-Wellesley Hospital and the Director of the Elfers Cardiovascular Center. He got his undergraduate education at Yale University and graduated with honors from Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. He did his, I hope I get this all right, George. He did his internal medicine residency at Boston City Hospital and his cardiology fellowship at Boston University. Dr. Philippides is a great wealth of experience and expertise, and we're lucky enough that he's going to be able to share some of that with us this evening. In addition, we're also going to be hearing from Jane Barr, who is the Community Wellness Coordinator at the Elfers Cardiovascular Center. Jane has a master's in public health and is a registered dietitian. Her background includes wellness program development, implementation, and evaluation. You'll also be hearing from Daniel again and me as the program continues. Enjoy.
Thank you, Beth, for that kind introduction. And I'd also like to thank all of you who are out there joining us tonight. We understand from Kim that this webinar, I guess, is sort of the most highly viewed one of this series, which is really gratifying. We're very, very happy that you're showing this kind of interest and participation. It's fantastic. As a heart specialist, I don't think I'm too surprised, though. The sad fact is that despite the great strides that we've made in addressing heart disease and heart health over the last 20, 30 years, heart disease still is the #1 killer of Americans, taking 1 in 4 lives in the United States. As a matter of fact, about every 40 seconds, this is a chilling statistic, but every 40 seconds, an American suffers a heart attack. So that's the bad news. The good news is, as our title implies, there are some simple things that we can do to improve our heart health and to change those statistics dramatically. I'm now going to show you one of my favorite studies, which I pull out all the time when we're giving these kinds of talk. And it was published in Circulation about 3 years ago, which is a major cardiology journal. And in this study, what the investigators did is they followed over 100,000 Americans, many of them nurses, middle-aged people mostly, for about 34 years. And they looked to see if they adopted 5 basic heart-healthy lifestyle habits. Did they eat a healthy diet? Did they exercise regularly? Did they maintain a healthy body weight? Did they not drink too much alcohol? And did they refrain from smoking? Just those 5 things. They're not easy, but they're simple. And look at what they found. In those patients who did all 5 of those lifestyles, who had heart-healthy lifestyles 1 through 5, there was an 82% lower risk of dying from a heart attack and a 65% lower risk of dying from cancer. To put this in numbers and in a way that we understand, in those people who adhere to all 5 of those lifestyle habits, on average, they added 12 to 14 years of life. Okay, just think about that. By just doing these simple things, you can live 14 years longer. Another way to look at this from this study, if you are age 50 and you adopt those 5 lifestyles, you would expect to live another 40 years, 40, to the age of 90. So you can see, while the numbers for heart attacks and stroke are still disconcerting, there is a path toward good heart health and to changing this quite dramatically. And the purpose of the cardiovascular team that I'm so happy to be a part of with Jane and Beth and Daniel, the reason that we're here is to maybe give us some direction and shine a light on the path toward cardiovascular health. It's not easy, but it actually is simpler than you think. And that is sort of the case that we're going to make with you guys tonight. Oh, by the way, the reason that we're all here again is only 3% of Americans met all of these lifestyle changes. So you'd think it would be really easy. It's not. It requires some thought and organization. And again, that's why we're all here to support you. So I should say that we kind of molded our program in no small part on a program put together by the American Heart Association about 10 years ago. And what they did was looked at 7 lifestyles, which you can see here in the box on the left. And they created a website where people can go and sort of grade themselves on how they do in each one of those lifestyle habits, being active, cholesterol, etc. And it's actually kind of a fun website. I strongly recommend that folks go to it. I think Kim will be disseminating a resource page later on or at some point. The link to this site is on that resource page. And I strongly recommend that you guys go to it and sort of check out how good your lifestyle is. They kind of grade you really easily, and then give some helpful tips as to how you might do better in the areas where you might need some help. So we sort of took that and took it to a different level. We changed the wording so that it was more focused on very simple actions that we could take. Okay, we got away from looking at disease like blood pressure and cholesterol and put it more into knowing your numbers, something that's positive and simple. As far as nutrition, we looked at, we asked people to nourish, to move, to be smoke-free. And then we actually added a couple elements, as Beth noted, of lifestyle medication, things that the American Heart Association did not focus on that we think is incredibly important, especially you could argue during stressful times like COVID, and that is sleep, restore, and relaxation, or dealing with stress, okay? So these are sort of the 6 areas that the speakers will be focusing on over the next 30 minutes or so. And again, the mantra is keep it simple and keep it action-oriented, not disease-oriented, but action-oriented. So with that, I'd like to hand off to our next speaker, Jane Barr.
Thank you, Dr. Philippides. So as Dr. Philippides said, we're going to focus on some really simple things that we can do to improve heart health. And I'm going to touch on some key concepts of eating a heart-healthy diet and how it connects to heart disease. I could talk about nutrition for hours and hours and hours and how it relates to heart health, but I'm going to try to give you some simple things to take away tonight. And the first one is to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables. It's really important to eat a variety because when you eat a variety, you're going to get a variety of what's called phytochemicals and flavonoids that are in your fruits and vegetables that actually help your body protect its cells from things like heart disease and cancer. So in order to get that variety, you want to look down into your shopping cart and see a rainbow of color. Another great way to get variety is to eat seasonally. Eating seasonally gives your diet and your body variety naturally. And you're also doing the best you can do because you're getting the freshest vegetables and fruits of the season. Another good tip to take away is always try to eat food in their closest form. A good example of this would be eating a whole apple and the peel. You'll get 4.4 grams of fiber from an entire apple and its peel. But if you were to eat a half a cup of applesauce, you would only get 1.4 grams of fiber. And fiber is another thing that is very important for our heart health. We get it from fruits and vegetables, but we also get it from whole grains. So another takeaway is to eat more whole grains, add them to your diet because that fiber that you're getting mostly from whole grains can actually lower your cholesterol and help you control your blood sugar as well as maintain a healthy weight. And all of these things together will help you combat heart disease or lower your risk for heart disease. If you're going to add, really focus on adding a lot of fiber to your diet, you want to be doing that gradually and drinking plenty of water. Fiber is very good for your gut health. But if you're not used to it, it can actually cause constipation. So you want to do it gradually and with a lot of water. And as a dietitian, I can't leave you without some examples of things to try. So maybe trying whole wheat pasta, 100% buckwheat noodles, quinoa, farro, barley, or brown rice. Swap it out. And then on the next slide, another good way to make your diet more heart healthy is to choose plant-based protein or lean protein sources. This is again going to increase the fiber in your diet, which will lower your risk for cardiovascular disease, some types of cancer, and again, the weight management. One of the reasons fiber helps with weight management is it actually, different types of fiber can actually decrease the spikes in blood sugar. But also it gives you that feeling of fullness when you're eating a high fiber diet. And studies have shown that when you have a high fiber diet, you're going to eat less total calories, and therefore that's better for weight management. And some great examples are listed here. Lentils, if you're going to try lentils, you might want to start with red lentils. They're a little bit more mild than a regular lentil. Nuts, chickpeas, And tempeh. Tempeh is one of my favorites. I started eating it in college when I had my first tempeh burger. It is fermented soybeans and it's delicious. It's also really good for your gut health because it's a fermented food. So you're going to get a probiotic benefit from that as well. Or just regular soybeans, or try if you are someone who likes meat, chicken, and turkey, always white meat with no skin. And now I want to move on to talk a little bit about the healthy unsaturated fats. Back in the 80s, we used to say, no, have a fat-free diet, but we have really come away from that and really pushing the healthy fats, the unsaturated fats. They should be 20 to 30% of your calories because these healthy fats actually lower your LDL or your bad cholesterol, and they provide essential fatty acids that your body needs but cannot make itself, such as the omega-6s and the omega-3 fatty acids. Everybody is probably familiar with hearing that, canola oil, olive oil, avocados have a heart health benefit. Studies have shown now that people with a higher, a regular consumption of olive oil have better heart health. So that's just another great reason to try some of these foods. I have some others listed here. Obviously the fatty fishes, which would be the salmon, the mackerel, the tuna, and then avocado, like I mentioned, sunflower oil, corn oil, walnuts, tofu, soybeans, and flax seeds. And then on my final slide, I want to talk about maybe some things you should think about eating a little bit less of. And again, we're just trying to keep it, keep these recommendations simple. So you want to avoid the saturated fats and the trans fats. 10% or less of total calories should come from the saturated fats. And try to avoid the processed foods because that is also another good source of saturated fat. And then limit your sodium. Sodium, a good rule of thumb is 400 milligrams or less in an entree, 200 milligrams or less in a snack, and avoiding adding any salt to foods, because 1 teaspoon of salt is going to give you 23 milligrams of sodium, and the daily recommendation is really only 1,500 milligrams a day. So just something to keep in mind. So if you limit those processed foods, and I call processed foods anything that comes in a box, so crackers, cookies, mac and cheese, a lot of the rice dishes, they're very high in sodium and very high in saturated fat. And then finally, you want to decrease those added sugars. Studies now show us that added sugars in foods, it increases our weight. It can increase the triglycerides in your blood system, which actually can lead to heart disease. And it also can increase inflammation. So all of those things can lead to heart disease. So it is really important to watch those added sugars. And that's why they're now on your food label. So if you turn your food label over and you see the total added sugars, that's a good way to sort of kind of keep abreast of how much added sugar your food has in it. And then finally, I want to say you want to avoid or really limit your alcohol, because alcohol again can raise your triglycerides, which can lead to heart disease. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Daniel. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Now that you have a healthy diet, let's talk about making your heart stronger with exercise. You've heard about the many reasons why you should exercise, all the benefits. There's controlling your weight, improving your sleep, reducing stress, and of course, improving your heart health. The American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. Moderate activities are usually you raise your heart rate up, somewhat. You're moving, but you can still carry on a conversation. They include things like walking, water aerobics. It says here, mowing the lawn, activities that you can do at an easy pace, but still, burn some calories. More vigorous activities include, swimming, running, biking, doing your favorite Peloton workout. These are activities that really get your heart rate up, right? And keep them up for a while, sustained amount of time. They might not last as long, these bouts of exercise might not last as long as the moderate activities because they're so high intensity and they get major muscle groups working at a high rate. So how do you stay motivated, right? You want to set goals for yourself. Start with small, but successful goals to keep you successful. What I recommend to a lot of the patients I work with is like, if you can't do 30 minutes straight of exercise, then go for a walk, break it up 10 minutes at a time. And then, add that time together. You can track your exercise. What I tend to do is that you could either track your exercise on a piece of paper, or you can get an Excel spreadsheet to see your progress. What I tend to do is use my Fitbit, my activity tracker, to see my progress over time. This will encourage you to see, all the progress you've made and keep you going a sustained period of time. You want to try to make this a habit. I usually try to tell people, take 21 days straight of doing some kind of activity. Whatever it is, walking, biking, and change it up if you can, but 21 days straight, that'll help you make it into a habit that you can keep for a long term. And make it something fun. I don't like to run for the sake of running. I won't run for the sake of running. I will play basketball, I will play soccer. Those are the activities I like to do that keeps me going. Make it something that's interesting and fun for you, so you stick to it. And then it'll turn into a habit. Next slide, please. You need strong muscles to do these activities. And I'm not talking about bodybuilder muscles, I'm not talking about super athlete muscles, but you need strength, okay? So there are 4 types of exercises you can include in your exercise routine. Strength training, resistance training, when you're lifting weights or even your own body weight. Flex balance, very important as we get older. A lot of Americans, 60 plus, tend to lose their ability to keep their balance and actually increase the risk of falls when they get turned over the age of 60. So there's a risk there. And then there's flexibility training, which I call more mobility training. So your ability to kind of like, if something falls on the floor, to pick it up with ease, if you have grandchildren, to get down there and play with them on the floor and get right back up without any issue. And then there's the endurance. If you like to play golf, it's a difference between 9 holes and 18, right? And how much energy you have, building that endurance and making sure you can spend as much time out there as you want doing your favorite activity. With free weights, you can go to any fitness center or purchase that. Those tend to be more expensive investments in your exercise. Also with machines, but you can also use resistance bands, at home. I tell a lot of my patients that I work with, you can just use a band and you can work out your entire body, your total body with it, upper body, lower body, everything. And there's also just your body weight, using your body weight, which I tend to do a lot, with pull-ups and push-ups. You want to try to work twice a week, each muscle group, with a couple of days off to give your muscles time to recover and recoup, okay? So the benefits of strength training are great. You have increased muscle mass, which will increase your metabolic rate, will help you burn more calories and be leaner overall. It's a great way to stay fit. And as I said, if you feel strong, feel more coordinated, you'll do more activities. I have a lot of patients I work with that say, please work with me to either improve my quality of life, to spend time with my family and so I can feel stronger, or for simple things it's like I'm bringing a carry-on onto an airplane and I don't have the strength to put it in the above compartment. So help me do that. So again, there's just a lot of benefits to strength training. Next slide, please. All right, you're ready to get started now. How do we get started? All right, so some tips. Like I said, you can do 30 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be continuous 30 minutes a day. You can break it up into 5-10 minute blocks out of that time, just as long as you're getting it on a daily basis. You want to try, when you start, keep it at a moderate intensity, not to overdo it. You don't want to burn out and get injured. So again, a walk around the block, and your neighborhood, or just a light, bike if you have a bicycle at home, or a light walk on your treadmill, whatever is easier. Start walking outside if that works. And then there's some basic tips about, physical activity when you get started. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. I try to do that regularly. I try to park a little further away from my office, especially in the spring and summer, not so much in the winter. And, you know, if you can, like I said earlier, we've been sitting down. It's the end of the day. We've probably been sitting down for hours in front of a screen, not moving much. If you could set your alarm to get up every hour, walk 3 to 5 minutes, and just be more active. And then you'll see that accumulate over time. And then track that either with an activity tracker or just track it on your phone. And you'll see that you make a lot of progress, and that you start to kind of evolve and snowball into other activities that are fun and active. Another thing I suggest is, if you can find a buddy to work out with, find somebody that'll motivate you, give them a call, take a walk with them, or just give them a call and email or text saying, hey, man, I took a walk, what are you doing? You know, just to stay motivated. So enjoy your favorite activity and then keep moving. Thank you. And I am going to pass it on to Beth or George.
Daniel, thank you very much. So I'm now going to jump into the next topic, which is be smoke free. And I have to admit, I thought a little bit about omitting this particular topic for this simple reason that the population here at Newton-Wellesley Hospital has lower rates of smoking than the general US population. It's certainly, I don't see it as much as I did in other hospitals and areas that I've worked at, but it is the #1 modifiable cause of all death in the US, from heart disease, cancer, lung disease. So I think it requires at least a brief mention. Again, that's the bad news. But the good news is, and I really don't mean to be glib, it's never too late to quit. If you look at the gray boxes to the right, you'll see what happens the moment that you stop smoking. Within about 20 minutes of stopping the habit, your heart rate and blood pressure start to drop. Within 3 months, studies have shown that your circulation and your lung function already start to improve. Within about 1 year, there's a dramatic risk, a risk of heart attack drops dramatically. As a matter of fact, in patients who've had a heart attack, probably the most impactful thing that they can do, more than any medicine that I can give them, is to stop smoking. If you stop smoking after your first heart attack, you lower your chance of a second heart attack by 50%, 50. There's no medicine that I can give you that's anywhere near as potent as that. After 10 years, you see the risk of stroke and many cancers go down dramatically. And here's something to look forward to. If you quit smoking, after 15 years, your risk of having a heart attack is just about the same as somebody who never smoked. So basically, after about 15 years, the slate is clean. You're starting over, clean slate. So again, it's never too late to quit. And how do you do that? What are the action plans that we can put into place that are simple? Well, the first thing is, I don't believe that anybody quits by themselves, right? Nobody eats by themselves. Nobody really smokes by themselves. It tends to be an activity that is spurred by social events, with family members, with friends. So if there are other people in the family who are smoking, see if they'll quit with you. Certainly, if you have friends, let them know you're trying to quit, get them to quit, or at least try to have those people smoke somewhere very distant from you. That's essential. Include your healthcare providers in the discussion. First and foremost, they can sometimes help with certain medications that will deal with craving and other things, but they'll also sort of be able to guide you through all of this. Next, as an action plan, don't focus on how tough it seems in the first few weeks, and it is tough. Focus instead on the rewards. I've had patients actually hold in their breast pocket a picture of their grandchild, and they want to get to their graduation or their wedding, and that inspires them. I've had patients keep a calendar and they mark an X for every day that they're smoke-free, and there really is something about seeing X after X for month after month that really sort of encourages you and reinforces that behavior. So and what many people do, and I've actually recommended this and done the calculation for folks, is calculate how much money you're saving if you stop smoking. So I think Massachusetts has one of the highest costs for packs of cigarettes, which by the way is a good thing. It's somewhere about an average about $10 per pack. So if you smoke a pack a day, that's $300 a month you're saving. Over the course of a year, you can buy a lot of good things with $4,000. Good trip to the Mediterranean, lots of good stuff. So it's really helpful to sort of focus on all that you're gaining during that time. And then finally, be realistic about the roadblocks and the setbacks. And the one statistic that I think is important to remember for those people who try and maybe have a setback or relapse and go back to nicotine, the CDC estimates that before people quit completely, on average, they try to quit about 6 to 10 times. So going back to smoking should not be considered sort of the final result or a final failure. It's really not. It is part of the bumpy road to getting to be smoke-free. And I think that we need to encourage ourselves and our friends and family members when that happens so we can sort of get back to it. All right, now we're going to get into kind of my main focus for the discussion tonight. And that's the part of the show where we talk about knowing your numbers. And I'm going to start with high blood pressure. So high blood pressure is very important. It's the single most significant risk factor for heart disease. And the reason for that is it's just so common. About 50% of American adults have high blood pressure. One of the really disquieting facts is that about a very high percent of people don't know that they have hypertension. And that's in no small part because hypertension oftentimes does not cause symptoms. And that's why it's called the silent killer. But hypertension nonetheless can cause, because of the sheer numbers, causes lots of strokes and heart attacks and kidney disease and eye disease. So it's really important that it's managed well. And I think the first and second step of managing our blood pressure is knowing our numbers. And there are a few numbers that we must know. First of all, if you look over to the graph on the right, I want to make sure everybody knows that 140 is no longer considered a normal systolic blood pressure. That's the higher number. That was thought to be true, and that was what we discussed many years ago. But over the last few years, the American Heart Association and other expert groups have basically highlighted that 120, shown here in green, that's actually a normal level. Anything above that is considered elevated, or anything above 140, 130 or above, sorry, is considered to be hypertension and you should think about treatment. So that means there are a lot of folks who can start to have disease occurring with blood pressures even in the 120s or the 130s, okay? So that's the first thing, is to know what normal is. Second, I think it's incumbent upon us to know what our blood pressures are. And many experts, and I've adopted this as a habit too, don't just go by the blood pressure that you get in the doctor's office. So blood pressures that are measured in the doctor's office are oftentimes elevated and not sort of good arbiters of what your blood pressure is at home during your everyday lives. And there are lots of obvious reasons for that, right? You rush through traffic to get to the office, you have to deal with parking, you have to deal with the check-in process, and then it's the stress of seeing the white coats surround you in the examination room. And all of that will lead to higher blood pressures than you might get at home. So I am a big proponent of having patients who have borderline high blood pressures, and we're looking to see if it's high enough to need treatment. And also for my patients who have hypertension and we're tracking their progress on medications and lifestyle, I'm a big proponent in having patients like that buy a blood pressure cuff and monitor their blood pressures at home. Nowadays, the blood pressure cuffs are actually pretty good, pretty simple to use, and fairly affordable. Oftentimes, if your physician or nurse practitioner writes you a prescription, you can get the blood pressure cuff paid for by your insurance company, which is nice. And again, they're easy to use. Many of them will actually keep the blood pressures registered inside the machine, so that when it's time to see your healthcare provider, you can bring the machine in and just press some buttons and show them what your blood pressures are. So again, it's getting easier and easier to monitor your blood pressures at home. And I will tell you that when a patient comes into my office and they have the last 3 months of blood pressure for me to review, that is a huge benefit as far as us making good decisions together and getting them on the proper lifestyle modification and medications. And it's much, much better, as you might imagine, than just having a blood pressure every 6 months and trying to guess if it's really an accurate assessment or not. So know your numbers and take control of the progress. And then finally, I do want to stress, as far as action plans, all of the things that Jane and Daniel spoke about in their excellent review is very, very important for blood pressure. So no question, being physically active, maintaining a good body weight, eating well are huge, have huge impact on blood pressure. What I think is underappreciated is how important sleep is for blood pressure. Study after study shows that poor sleep patterns, not sleeping enough, having sleep apnea that's not addressed will lead to increases in blood pressure. And finally, alcohol and cigarette use both raise the blood pressure. So these are the kinds of things that you want to think about and discuss with your healthcare providers if you're looking at high blood pressure. Second, part two of know your numbers, cholesterol. So some cholesterol is okay. We need it for many of our cells and organs to work appropriately, but too much cholesterol leads to increased plaque formation and clots forming in our vessels, and that translates into a higher rate of heart attack and stroke. So we basically want to have our cholesterol well controlled. And again, the action here, very similar to hypertension, is to know your numbers, okay? All of us as adults in this country should know what our cholesterol is and what our healthcare providers want our cholesterol to be. This chart on the right shows kind of the most widely disseminated and used chart to sort of show what the appropriate cholesterol is. And I think it's an okay start to know that. So if your bad cholesterol is above 100, I think it's good to know that that's higher than you want it to be. But this is sort of simplistic. When I first started training, we would look at this chart and say, okay, if you're above a certain amount, we give you a cholesterol medication. If you're below a certain amount, then we don't. But nowadays, cholesterol management has become a little bit more sophisticated than that. And now what we do is we try to assess what your cardiovascular risk is, what your CV risk is. And what that means is we want to sort of look at you, not just your cholesterol, but look at the whole picture of you, your age, your gender. Do you smoke? Do you have diabetes? What's your blood pressure? And then try to figure out what are the chances that you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke over the next 10 years. And if your risk for that is high, because that's what we're trying to ward off. We're not trying to give you perfect numbers. We're trying to make sure that you don't have a heart attack or a stroke, that your risk is low. And if we calculate out that your risk is high, that is when we tend to be more aggressive about giving cholesterol medications, always in conjunction with the lifestyle modifications that Jane and Daniel spoke about. So you might be asking, well, how do we figure out risk? Good question. There actually is a calculator that cardiologists and primary care physicians have been using now for years. It's called the ASCVD risk calculator, and I just showed it up, put it up here. Again, if you are so inclined and you want to have a rough idea as to what your risk of a heart attack or a stroke is over the next 10 years, Kim will get you the link to that. It's very, very easy to use. You go to this site and you can just plug in your age and your gender, your numbers if you know them. And this will basically let you know what your risk is. And the way that we physicians use this is as follows. If your risk based on this calculation is 5% or less, then it's so low that you likely don't need cholesterol medications. You should focus on having heart healthy lifestyle alone for now. On the other end of the spectrum, if your risk is above 20%, meaning your chance of having a heart attack or a stroke over the next 10 years is 1 in 5, which sounds kind of scary, and it is, then you likely should be on a cholesterol medication in conjunction with all the lifestyle things that we discussed. Where the art of medicine comes in and where we need to have lots of discussions with our physicians is when we're in that intermediate range, about 5 to 20%. There, it sort of depends on how aggressive the patient wants to be, what other medications they're on, what their family history is. There are lots of other things that go into the discussion for folks who are kind of in the middle, but it's a good springboard for that discussion if you know what your risk is, and that's really the starting point. So again, when it comes to knowing your numbers with cholesterol management, it's not just enough to sort of know what your cholesterol is. You also need to put it in the context of what is my overall risk for having a heart attack and stroke, and that leads to a good discussion with your doctor. And then as far as lifestyle goes, again, all of the things that Jane and Daniel said pertain to cholesterol, really important. I'm going to just pull out two of my favorite things culled from recent studies and literature. And the one thing that I would say is I'm very compelled by the studies that show that populations of people and individuals who eat fish 2 times a week or more and substitute out the red meat do a lot better. So fish, as Jane outlined, has lots of great oils in them and are very protective and good for your cholesterol. And secondly, the study that Jane alluded to, where just up to a teaspoon of olive oil a day and lowering the butter led to something like a 19% reduction in heart attacks. So that's not a lot of olive oil, and it's not a big intervention as far as your diet, but it has significant impact on your cholesterol and on your heart health. So I might be partial to that one, given my Mediterranean background. I'm a big believer in olive oil. I love it, but I think this was a very encouraging study showing us, again, something simple, something action to do. And then finally, as far as knowing your numbers, I'm going to talk a little bit about diabetes, which, as you know, is having high blood sugar. Having high blood sugar definitely increases the risk of growing plaque in our arteries and increase the risk for developing diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. And again, you know what the mantra is, know your numbers. The numbers here that are important are definitely weight. There's no question that as your weight increases, your risk of diabetes increases dramatically. There are some studies that suggest that 90%, 90, of the diabetes in this country is explained by lifestyle, specifically your weight and how active you are. And if you actually were really good on both those fronts, the risk of diabetes sort of plummets. So you need to sort of be knowing your weight and managing it. And then you need to know how much sugar is in your blood. And there are two ways that physicians can look in that. One is they can get you while you're fasting, having had nothing to eat over the, since midnight, and check what your glucose is, what your sugar is. And you can see over here, if it's less than 100, that's really good. If it's more than 126, that's a sign that you've ticked the threshold for diabetes, and we have to start thinking about medicines and other other intensive measures. But another measurement of whether or not you have diabetes, which is probably a better one because it's not dependent on what's going on at that instant, is something called a hemoglobin A1C. And this is a measurement of how much sugar binds to your blood, and that stays around in some form for about 3 months. So this really looks at the average amount of sugar in your blood over the last 3 months. So it's a slightly better judge of whether or not you're trending toward diabetes because it's looking at more of a longer term metric. And on that one, the hemoglobin A1C, if it's greater than 6.5, that is often the threshold for having diabetes, and you'd like it to be less than 5.7. So the things that we can do if we have diabetes, we're in the red and we want to treat it and make it better, or if we're in the yellow and we're close, are the things, again, that Dan and Jane outlined. Make good food choices, maintain a healthy body weight, that is huge, and commit to regular physical activity. There are studies that have been done that show that if you're in the yellow, you've got a propensity toward diabetes, and you follow these lifestyle choices, that the impact on with weight and exercise are as potent, if not stronger, than certain diabetes medications. So again, all roads lead to lifestyle modification to deal with this. Now, on my so you might notice that I just spent about 10 minutes talking about 3 diseases or risk factors: hypertension, cholesterol, and diabetes. And not one time did I really mention medications. I really focused on knowing your numbers and adopting a lifestyle. I want to sort of break this down to make it simple. If you had to have an index card with the numbers that I think are important to bring with you to your doctor's office or to ask your doctor about the next time you went, this is the index card. It's 6 of them. It's know what your blood pressure is at home, know what your bad cholesterol is, and then your doctor can tell you what they want it to be. Know what your risk score is for having a stroke or a heart attack over the next 10 years, knowing your weight, your blood sugar, and what the hemoglobin A1C is. And these are all very standard things that primary care physicians and cardiologists and endocrinologists all look at and focus on. And this is the basis for the conversation. I've been a cardiologist for 25 years and treated a lot of people for cholesterol, blood pressure, and helped with diabetes. And I have never successfully treated them by myself. The key person in this whole endeavor is always us as the patient, not the physician, not the nurse practitioner. We can sort of guide and we can give the proper path, but the heavy work and the heavy walking is going to be by the patient. So if you come armed with your data and your numbers and good questions, the path is going to be much simpler. And that is sort of the theme of my several slides. So with that, thank you for your attention. And I'm going to hand it over to Beth.
Thank you, George. All right, I would like to take a look at the gentle side of taking care of your health. That's relax and restore. They sound so simple and easy, and they are, but they're super important. This day and age, the body is undergoing a lot of stressors in our modern society. The sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, or freeze function, is really overworked by the amount of stimulation and information coming at us all the time. That overworking of the sympathetic nervous system leads to systemic inflammation, which is a leading contributor to all the chronic disease increases we're seeing in our country today. So we would like to, in order to offset the stresses on the sympathetic nervous system, cultivate better caretaking of our parasympathetic nervous system. That's our rest and digest process. And that's where relaxation comes in. The relaxation response, being able to initiate that in your body, goes a long way toward offsetting the stressors that are taxing your body when it's in sympathetic system mode. So next slide, George, please. I'd like to just take a minute. There are lots of ways you can relax. I just want to underscore that having a couple cocktails and watching Netflix really isn't one of them. It feels like it in your brain, but your body isn't appreciating that work it has to do with processing that alcohol and potentially a stressful plot line in your Netflix show. So if you stick with the breath, this is not a new concept. The ancient practices of Ayurveda and yoga have known this for centuries, that breath work for body health is critical. There are lots of ways you can breathe. I just selected one way that's very simple that we can all enjoy together this evening. It's called the 4-4-8 breath. Inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 4, and exhale for a count of 8. The count of 4 can be as fast or as slow as you want. The critical thing is your exhale is twice as long as your inhale. And I think when you try this, you'll feel the relaxation in your shoulders on that second half of your exhale. You're going to feel the relaxation hit your body. You can do this in traffic. You can do this while you're on hold. You can do this anytime you like. You can do it right now with me. And I'm going to just walk you through it. Inhale for 4. Hold it for 4. Exhale for 8. And feel that relaxation wash over you. It's also nice if you can want to give your mind a break to give yourself a word for each of these steps. I like peace on the inhale. Fill your body with peace. Savor that inhalation. Let that oxygen feed every cell in your body. Yum. And then release on the exhale. That's releasing all the stale air, all the busyness of your day, the toxic thoughts, whatever you've got going on, you want to let go. That's the perfect time to do it, is during that release. And if you can do this once, fantastic. You can do it for 5 minutes, even better. But don't ignore the beauty of breath work and getting your body to a relaxation state that can combat the stressors and the inflammation that can arise from daily life. Next slide, please. Another way we can relax ourselves is through vagus nerve stimulation. This is obviously a stylized version of the human body, but that yellow line you see traveling from the brainstem through all the organs down to the digestive system is the vagus nerve. And it is the primary communication highway of the parasympathetic nervous system. And a lot of times it gets overloaded. So what you can do to activate it is stimulate that nerve from the outside. It appreciates mild vibrations that can come from singing, humming, chanting that reverberate in the back of the skull. Also, gargling is good. I don't know about you, but I'm often in situations where chanting and gargling might not be appreciated by the people around me. So I'm offering you massage as an option. I don't know if you can see in this image here, this gentleman has a tattoo behind his ear in the shape of a cross. That's exactly the spot you'd like to massage. And massage, I use the term loosely, it's very gentle. Just put a few fingers there, right where your ear attaches to your head. Between that and your hairline, there's a nice smooth area of skin over some bone. And you can just rub that gently, really just slipping the skin over the bone. You can do that on both sides. And that's really telling your vagus nerve, like, go ahead, coast is clear, let that communication flow. And if you want a little extra credit, you can massage the outside of your ear, down your neck, follow that nerve as it goes, and it'll really activate that part of your system that's going to help you rebuild and repair from the damage of the day. All right, so now we've talked about a couple of relaxation techniques that are easy and subtle. I hope you're doing them right now as I'm talking. And obviously, relaxation segues beautifully into sleep. And as George mentioned, sleep is very important for the body. It has direct impacts on the numbers you want to watch as you monitor your heart health. And sleep, we say 7 to 9 hours is ideal, so quantity is important. A dark room, cool temperatures, limited technology. Don't eat a few hours before you go to bed, so your body is done with all its work of digesting and it can just settle in and do the repair and restoration work. So as a way to ease yourself into your quality sleep mode, next slide, please. I'm offering you some guided relaxation opportunities. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of available technology to aid you in your relaxation and meditation. I'm trying to shortcut all that for you. And instead of going down a rabbit hole of selecting some app that's just right for you, I'm going to suggest using Insight Timer. Here it is pictured here. That's what the little icon looks like. If you want to load that onto your phone, it's free. And it has thousands of things you can listen to relax and ease you into sleep. The list is there: spoken meditations, music tracks, sound baths, yoga classes, binaural beats. If you're not familiar with that, that's a whole vibrational sound pattern that really brings your body in tune with itself, and walking meditations. So you can choose a meditation from 2 minutes to 3 hours, whatever you want to listen to, whatever your mood is. I've selected one from the thousands because, again, I don't want to send you into a hours-long process trying to find what's right for you. As you can see, I've listed it here under the icon. It's called Restorative Sleep Meditation, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's 17 minutes. Quite honestly, I know the first 10 minutes are good, and then I'm always asleep. I don't know what the last 7 minutes sound like. I assume they're as good as the first 10, but I recommend trying that tonight. Just give it a try and see if it works for you. If not, you can go and explore some of the other options, but it's a really nice way to settle you in to get your mind from being busy, get your body from being tense, and lets you really settle into a quality night's sleep. And I'd like to leave you with one other little tip that you can enact this evening. Next slide, please. This is what I call note to self. And when you settle in for your night's sleep, that's so restorative. Remember how much work is happening while you're sleeping, that your body is really doing you a lot of favors. That you want to set yourself up to make the most of it. So while you're brushing your teeth tonight, you can grab a marker. I use a whiteboard marker like the one pictured here, but you can use any magic marker, maybe not a Sharpie. And while you're brushing your teeth, think about something that you're looking forward to tomorrow. And when you're done brushing your teeth, put your toothbrush down, pick up your marker, and just write that on the mirror. I am looking forward to, and it can be simple. It can be my first sip of coffee in the morning. It could be, I'm looking forward to walking my dog. I'm looking forward to catching up with a friend. I'm looking forward to finishing my book. I'm looking forward to packing up for the weekend. And so write that on the mirror as you go to bed. And this whole gratitude exercise is very beneficial for relaxation and restoration. And when you go to sleep, hopefully listening to your favorite meditation, you get a nice solid sleep and you wake up in the morning. And this is where I want to challenge you with. A lot of people think when they go to sleep, that's the end of their day. I'm finishing off my day with a night's sleep. I really want to challenge you to think of your night's sleep as how you're preparing yourself for the day ahead. All right. And that's what this little exercise does, because now when you wake up in the morning, fully rested, and you tiptoe into the bathroom, the first thing you'll see on the mirror is, I am looking forward to my first sip of coffee, or whatever it is you chose. So that's how I'd like to end this little section on simple things to improve your heart health, and a positive note, and how you're going to start your day tomorrow. So thank you for listening. There have been a few questions about some of the materials we've been seeing tonight. This entire session is being recorded. And if you've signed up for the webinar, which obviously you have, you'll receive a recording of this presentation in the coming days via email. We are not allowed to be sending out actual slides in electronic form, but you will be able to watch the recording as many times as you like. In addition, you'll be getting a little resource guide that includes resources that have been mentioned tonight, as well as additional online resources that delve a little deeper into some of these topics, and you can explore at your leisure. All right, now I'm honored to present our next speakers, Robert Javer and Joan Mikula, who are co-coordinators of the Mended Hearts Newton group. And they are both cardiac patients, and they are both past participants in the cardiac rehab program at Newton-Wellesley Hospital. Take it away, Bob and Joan.
Evening. I'm Bob Jobber, and along with Joan McCullough, we're the co-coordinators of the Mended Hearts of Newton Group. Mended Hearts you may not have heard of, and it is the world's largest peer-to-peer group for cardiac patients and their families. All age groups are covered under our umbrella. We have Little Mended Hearts, which is actually for babies and young children born with heart defects. Young Mended Hearts is a recent addition, and it's for people aged 15 to 55. And Mended Hearts is for those that are 55 and older. Our mission is to inspire hope and to improve the quality of life for heart patients and for their families through ongoing peer-to-peer support. Mended Hearts is a national organization. There are over 190 chapters and over 60,000 members. And we're lucky to have a local group in Mended Hearts of Newton. We're group number 496. There's much information that is offered by Mended Hearts to its members. There are written guides that address various cardiac issues, and there are webinars on various topics, and there are also discussion guides. These are available in hard copy, digital online, smartphone, and tablet apps. We have educational meetings through our group, and we meet monthly. After appropriate training, our members also are able to go into hospitals to meet with cardiac patients. We were able to do this before COVID, and hopefully we'll be doing it after COVID. And we make a special connection with the patients because we too have had cardiac issues, and we can offer them a perspective that no health professional can. I'm going to turn this over to Joan.
Good evening. Thanks, Bob. So to continue just briefly on what Mended Hearts nationally, which by the way is based in Albany, Georgia, offers, the essential goal of many of their programs is to create empowered patients. And so the educational sessions, the support communities, the one-on-one interventions that are available to callers, all have to do with becoming an empowered patient. One, educate yourself about your condition, understand your diagnosis and what it means, be a key part and probably be even a leader in your treatment team. You're not a passive member, you know more about yourself than any other member of the team. And so to contribute to the plan that evolves is critically important. Get information, ask questions, voice your opinions. I'd like to refer you to mendedhearts.org because the slides that Bob has put together came from Mended Hearts, and the description of all of the programs in great detail are listed on the website. Next slide. The connections that are offered are typically with trained patients, trained parents of young children, and trained caregivers. Anyone can call Mended Hearts 7 days a week. You schedule video chats. This is not a substitute for any kind of medical guidance. This is really to talk about what an experience has been like and to get tips from somebody who has essentially walked in some shoes before you about what the experience looks like. The online communities focuses on AFib, another on heart failure, another on valves. And so there's an opportunity to converse in a real way with people across the country who are going through similar challenges with trained folks at the helm. Next slide. The hospital accredited visitors program that Bob talked about has been on hold post-COVID. What's interesting is that this week, Mended Hearts just launched another program, which is solely online, but has to be offered in collaboration with hospitals. And it's essentially for people who are experiencing heart failure, who are ready to leave the hospital, and it helps with the transition home. Next slide. Advocacy is a key function of the Mended Hearts organization. And I'll just give a couple of examples to illustrate the points that are made on the slide. There's a major prescription benefits company that recently removed all but one drug, one of its anticoagulation drugs, from several of its commercial plans, effective January 1st, 2022. And what Mended Hearts has done is partner with others in the national cardiovascular community to essentially work with, advocate with, and try to move the needle on that decision, because that decision essentially forces patients to switch meds and not necessarily supported by their medical practitioner. So they're very involved in that kind of advocacy. The third point here related to cardiac rehabilitation. Cardiac rehabilitation, where Bob and I both essentially got our first injection of what Mended Hearts is about. It's a comprehensive program, and we went through the Newton-Wellesley program following a cardiac event or a procedure that offers a team-based, supervised exercise program, training, education, skill development for folks who have gone through these situations to create heart-healthy lives. Despite the evidence that suggests that cardiac rehab programs can prolong life, can decrease hospital readmissions, can improve functional status, quality of life, and medication adherence, across the nation, only between 19 and 33% of individuals who have gone through a cardiac event are actually participating in cardiac rehab. And so Mended Hearts has that as a very particular focus. Next slide. So that brings us to our Mended Hearts of Newton. We do have a local meeting on Zoom currently on the first Thursday of every month. We have presentations, we have discussions. It's an opportunity for individuals who have experienced cardiac events to share their concerns, to hear from experts. You know, the reality is that those of us who have had cardiac events meet with our cardiologist somewhat infrequently if we're doing well. And so this is really an opportunity to continue to educate ourselves. It's really we think, ongoing patient education at its best. The patients who are participating all have cardiovascular histories. Most have participated in and actually graduated from the Newton-Wellesley cardiac rehab program, although anyone from any hospital system is welcome. I think this is probably an opportunity to put in a plug for the important work that Newton-Wellesley Hospital's cardiac rehab program has done. They have so encouraged the development of this Mended Hearts initiative, which just launched in July of 2021. The teaming the staffing, the support that Bob and I have both been given is really quite incredible. And Dr. Philippides' support of our work has helped enormously. So should you have any questions, we would welcome either phone calls or emails to either Bob or myself, and we will be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan and Bob. That brings us to the question and answer section of our evening. There have been a number of questions posed on a variety of topics, so we'll try to get through all of them. I'm going to start. There are a few clustered around blood pressure, so maybe Dr. Philippides would like to address these. Question being, what is the best time of day to take blood pressure readings, and how often should they be taken?
Those are good questions. So taking a step back, blood pressures tend to be a little bit higher in the morning because of our natural circadian rhythms. And then as the day goes by, they drop down a little bit and sort of plateau at a lower level. So oftentimes when you're first being asked to check your blood pressure, your healthcare provider might ask you to take it in the morning, not immediately upon waking, but sort of before breakfast and meds, just to see what they are in the morning. And then usually the late afternoon or the evening when they're at their lowest. And once you and your physician have an idea as to what those numbers are, then you can probably just focus on the later one. And that's the one you'll use. The key is moving forward. Once you know what the morning and the PM is, you want to check the blood pressure at the same time in the afternoon or evening each day. So it actually does matter that you check it at the same time. So initially AM and PM to see how high the AM is and how low it goes in the PM. And for maintenance, just in the PM, same time every night.
All right, thank you. I hope that answers the question someone just asked about the best way to present this data to the doctor. You just bring the whole readings in, but your recorded day and night readings.
Really good question. So one is, you can be low tech. You can get a lined notebook and put the date, AM blood pressure, PM blood pressure, and sort of bring those in. You can go online and just Google blood pressure log, and there are about 1 million of those that you can print up, and you can pick the one that's sort of simple for you. And I'll bet you if you ask your nurse practitioner or doctor, they have a favorite one stored in their computer. I know that I do. If folks are interested, I can certainly send one that I think is simple that I give to my patients, and we can put it on the resource page.
All right, great. Well, also, Dr. Philippides, while you're there, question about statins, side effects, diabetes, increased diabetes risk with statins. There are some questions on that, of that ilk.
Yeah, so that's a really good question as well. I saw that one. So the cholesterol medications, the statins, like all medications, have some side effects, okay? I just want to throw out there, one, there's absolutely no evidence from the studies that it has anything to do with cognitive decline or dementia. That we get that one a lot, and there's just no evidence for that. So I want to put that one off so people don't get afraid of it. But there is a small effect on sugars and diabetes. And there is a really small but significant slight increase in developing higher sugars and diabetes if you take the cholesterol medications. There are a few buts here, though. However, in the people that graduate to diabetes who started a statin medication, these were people who were overwhelmingly pre-diabetic or had a propensity to go into diabetes. They tended to be populations that were heavier, more sedentary, and at baseline, their sugars were already creeping up. So to put it in perspective, it wasn't that the statin took a slim, fit person and moved them into diabetes. It took folks who were sort of on the edge and moved them just a little bit past the threshold for diabetes. But two, related to that, what is the #1 killer of diabetics? Heart disease. What does cholesterol lower the risk of? Heart attacks and heart disease. So when they actually looked at the people that got the cholesterol medications and went to diabetes, they still did better, had better outcomes by being on the statin and being diabetic than being just below diabetes and not being on the statin. In other words, the benefit of the statin outweighed the downside of pushing you just over the diabetes line. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you and your physician come to the conclusion that you should be on a statin to lower the risk of heart attacks and stroke, you should be on it. And if you have a propensity to diabetes, then you should deal with that at the same time. Do what Dan said and exercise, do what Jane said and eat well. That's really the answer, not to avoid the statin. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a question, this sort of crossover question between Dr. Philippides and Jane. The question of red wine, the benefits of red wine. Are there any to heart health? 1 glass a day.
Jane, do you want to start and then I can jump in?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, red wine is one of those things that it's moderation, moderation, moderation. The recommendation is 1 glass if you're a man, or 1 glass if you're a woman, 2 glasses if you're a man, no more than 4 to a maximum of 6 per week. But with that comes some hedging. And as a dietitian, I've counseled patients for many years, and my experience is the red wine is empty calories that actually lowers inhibitions and leads to bad food choices. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There have been studies that show that, you know, that amount of drinking, 1 per day if you're a woman, 2 if you're a man, there might be a slightly, you know, improvement in cholesterol and slightly lower heart attacks. But again, if it's not moderated, there are, you know, when you drink almost any amount, there are increase in cancers, motor vehicle accidents, suicide, mental health issues. You know, there is some baggage that goes along with drinking. And it's also perhaps different if you are an 85-year-old person whose balance is not good versus a 25-year-old person. You know, in the 85-year-old whose balance is not good, there are increased risks of fall. So there are other things to consider. You can't look at it in a vacuum. But again, if you moderate, like Jane said, and there's no other reason not to take it, there are some cardiovascular benefits in that range.
All right, here's another couple of questions for Jane. The fruit and vegetable supplements we see advertised these days, are they an adequate substitute for the real thing in their concentrated form?
As a dietitian, I'm going to say absolutely not. There's no substitution for the fiber that you're going to get from the actual fruit and the actual vegetable. And in those supplements, you don't know, they're not regulated, so you're not really sure what you're getting. And a lot of the times they're missing, or the flavonoids and the phytochemicals that really work to fight disease in your body have been extracted or have been destroyed in the process of creating that supplement. So I would say absolutely use the real food if at all possible.
All right. And then regarding seed oils, I know this has to do with the amount of processing involved, but are seed oils inflammatory aside from olive oil and avocado oil? The grapeseed, canola, or all the other seed oils?
Olive oil is probably the best, is what I would say. I would recommend, because olive oil has been studied the most, and it has the polyphenols in it that actually decreases inflammation. The other seed oils I don't feel have been studied as exclusively or as extensively as olive oil. So I would recommend olive oil over those other oils, if that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to oils, they just like extra virgin versus virgin olive oil, the amount of processing is always going to introduce potential heat and chemicals that can degrade the oil. So you want to get as close to pure as possible. And some of those seed oils are highly processed. So that's really what you're looking for, I think, in choosing the oils. All right.
And that's a really good point. I want to make that point about extra virgin olive oil. A lot of people think olive oil is olive oil, but the extra virgin olive oil is actually the most purest form of olive oil. It's the least processed, and it's cold pressed olive oil. And that is where you're going to get the most benefit of those fatty acids. So you definitely want to choose, if you can, an extra virgin olive oil.
Great, thank you. Okay, here's a question. Is caffeine bad for heart health?
So I'm happy to say that for the most part, no. There are, let me take a step back. There might be a little bit of a bump in blood pressure that's mild. And I think for some people, caffeine can lead to some palpitations. But it's really interesting how there's been some recent trials that show that drinking caffeine lowers the risk of certain very common diseases like atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation is actually an arrhythmia, right? It's extra fast heartbeats. You'd think that caffeine would make that worse. It turns out that that's either not the case or it's protective. And the other thing that I find encouraging, because I love caffeine and cannot live or work without it, I have to admit that. The other encouraging thing is there seem to be some studies that suggest that drinking caffeine, especially certain kinds of tea, are really good for cognition and lower the rate of dementia in individuals and populations. And I think Jane's M word is the right one. This has been studied out to about 4 or 5, I forget how many cups of coffee, but I think caffeine in moderation is okay. Again, if you have blood pressure that's out of control or feel palpitations, check with your doctor. But otherwise, I don't think caffeine is a major heart issue.
Okay. There's a couple of questions about cannabis, smoking cannabis versus smoking cigarettes, and the heart impact of CBD products.
Jane, do you want to field this one? Do you want me to field it?
I think this is you.
I was going to say Jane is the cannabis expert, but I'll field it anyway. So I can answer about cannabis, and that's smoked or ingested. And it does seem to lead to an increased risk of blood clotting, heart attack. I don't know about stroke, but definitely heart attack. So this thing we used to tell our patients 30 years ago, quit the 2 packs a day, quit smoking 40 cigarettes, and then I won't say anything about the joints you're smoking. I think that might have been okay back then when the intensity, the strength of the cannabis was much lower. And quite frankly, getting somebody off 2 packs of cigarettes is a good idea. But the cannabis products that especially young people are using now are very potent. And there have been lots of case reports. And now I think it's pretty clear that there's an increased risk of stroke, of heart attacks and heart disease. So we now basically advise strongly against it. And that includes eating it as well. As far as CBD, there's kind of mixed data out there because some CBD products actually have pretty strong anti-inflammatory properties. But to my knowledge, and there might be out there, I don't know of any good randomized studies looking to see what the impact is. So that's about what I know.
Okay. There are a couple of relaxation questions. Someone mentioned the practice of tapping, also known as emotional freedom technique. Definitely a great relaxation procedure or practice. I know for the families involved at Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook is a big tapping foundation that was established after that crisis. And it's very effective for people undergoing trauma or a lot of anxious feelings. Definitely worthwhile looking into if you're interested. Someone asked for a repeat on the name of the sleep meditation. It's called Restorative Sleep Meditation on Insight Timer. It's guided by Kate James is the name of the person who does it. Someone asked, does walking my dogs 3 times a day count as exercise? Daniel?
Absolutely does, definitely. Anytime you can get out and walk, pets are great, especially dogs, to get you moving. If you could supplement that also with some strength training, you'll be all set.
Excellent. Someone has a question about exercise and diabetes prevention. What time of day, and how much is needed?
So as I said, if you can get 150 minutes a week of exercise, especially cardiovascular exercise, walking, keeping a steady heart rate up, that'll help with manage your blood sugar. And then if you can do this about 3 to 5 days a week, it's helpful. Strength training, if you can add that 2 days a week, that should help you manage your blood sugar.
And I'm just going to ask Daniel, will you be including any resources on using bands for strength training in the resource guide we're sending out after this webinar?
Yeah, so we've had 3 links on the resource guide, which there's one about chair exercises that we started off with, some band exercises, and then some general exercises you can do at home.
Super, thank you. All right, what else do we have here? How about when should one consider an aspirin regimen? Dr. Philippides.
So I'll field that one. So As you guys know, aspirin has a lot of really positive cardiovascular qualities. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's a mild blood thinner, as it were. It makes it less likely your blood will clot. And both of those actions are really good for warding off heart attack and perhaps stroke. The downside of aspirin, though, is that it can cause bleeding. And the bleeding risk of aspirin, I think, is occasionally underappreciated. So whenever you're prescribing it, you have to sort of make sure that the benefits of it are higher than the risks. So here's what I can say in summary, and there have been thousands, maybe millions of people studied. If you've had a heart attack or a stroke, your risk of having another heart attack or stroke is so high that there's no question you should be on an aspirin unless there's a compelling reason not to. So almost all patients who have a heart attack or certain kinds of stroke, they'll be prescribed an aspirin or something like it, okay? There's not a lot of thinking in those cases. There's got to be a reason not to take it, like, you've had profound bleeding someplace, okay? That's different than the person who's never had a heart attack or a stroke, who's contemplating taking aspirin to ward off the first heart attack or stroke, what we call primary prevention, stopping the first bad event from happening. That one's more complicated because your risk of having a heart attack or stroke is not that high if you've never had that one before. And therefore, the downside of aspirin, the bleeding, might be, overcome that benefit. There was a recent study that came out, you guys might have seen it, it was sort of widely publicized, showing that if you're 60 years or older, taking an aspirin to ward off a first heart attack or stroke might be a bad idea because your risk of bleeding is actually so high that it's not beneficial, that the risk of bleeding outweighs the benefit. And that was particularly true in women, where the bleeding risk might have been a little bit higher. So there were a lot of people over the age of 60 who had been on aspirin prior to ward off the first stroke or heart attack, who then had that removed based on this trial. Okay, so I think what I can say is, if you're less than 60, have not had a heart attack or a stroke, and are at a very high risk for having it, that's the group where I think the discussion to start aspirin is a good one. But really, over the age of 60 or 70, to use it for primary prevention to ward off a first stroke or heart attack, we're no longer recommending that regularly.
Okay, thank you. Someone is asking about, are we all available at the Elfers Center? Well, everybody, I think, but me, but there are people just like me there that can give you that same kind of information. So the answer is basically yes. Let's see. Some other people have specific questions about cardiac rehab, and I think we can take those offline because they're specific to certain people. Here's one for Jane. Do frozen fruits have the same nutritional benefit as fresh fruits if they're going to be blended in a smoothie?
Absolutely. Frozen fruits are a great thing to keep on hand. I always have them in my freezer, and especially for smoothies. And I freeze my brown bananas as well. Like if you have fruit that's going bad, especially the bananas, I stick them in there. Same with blueberries in my refrigerator. If they're getting a little old, I stick them in the freezer. So I say if you're eating them because they're frozen, they're great. The only thing you would ever want to look for is looking at the package to make sure they weren't like flash frozen with something. So if you look at the ingredient list, the only thing that should be on there is the actual fruit.
Okay, I'm just going to add a little thing I learned recently talking to someone from South America. If you buy your bananas organic and you cut them up and put them in the freezer, leave the skin on and use that whole chunk with the skin in your smoothie. That contains resistant starch, which your gut microbiome just loves, and it's little waste and great for your body. So there you go. All right, I think that we're getting close to the end here of questions. There's one other one specifically. Any thoughts about vitamin K2 to help decalcify arteries? Dr. Philippides, any thoughts on that?
To my knowledge, there are no, I sound like a robot. To my knowledge, there are no good randomized studies showing that there's benefits of that therapy. I think at this point, it's still speculative. Can I just add one thing, Beth? I was looking through the Q&A that there have been a few questions about CBD. And I don't think that we sort of adequately address some of those questions. So for those who are interested, just email me or get my email from Kim, And we'll look into that and sort of get back to you with the sort of the most up-to-date information on that. There seems to be interest there, and I want to make sure that I answer folks' questions.
Okay, and so I think we can wrap up a couple minutes ahead of time. Just know that for those of you that wanted to see reprints of things, that we will be getting the presentation to view at your leisure as many times as you want in your email in the coming days. And hopefully we've been able to address some of your concerns regarding heart health. And don't forget to start taking some action tonight, tomorrow, and the days ahead.